Shri Aksharayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Shri Krishna Namastu Me Madeka Bandho Matsangin Madguru Mahadhana Manistarika Madbhagya Madananda Namastute Asadhu Sadhutadayin Natini Chochatakara Hanamunchitarashin Nam Priyamana Vitkantayospura Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya 1.10.13 to 1.10.23 13 सर्वे ते निमिषै रक्षैस् तम अनुद्रुतचेतसः वीक्षन्तः स्नेहसम्बद्धा विचेलुस्तत्र तत्रः. All their hearts were melting for him on the pot of attraction. They looked at him without blinking their eyes, and they moved hither and thither in perplexity. I have shared two screens. I don't know if you can see it. Is it clear enough? Or is it too small? If it is too small, I don't know what to do. Actually, I do know what to do. Let me do like this. I'll have to switch between these two all the time. Okay. In which case, let me go back, unshare, stop share, and then reshare. Okay. It's one complex problem. Okay, let me try to solve it. I will need to see the original. So I will put it in another screen. 1.10. For reference. Translate. It's a translation for reference. Okay. Bharata Deepika. Ateva Animishai Netrai Tatra Tatra Arhana Anayanadhyartham Chalantisma. So they looked at him. They moved hither and thither. They moved hither and thither in perplexity because they wanted to bring items with which they could worship him and so on. Yataha snehena samyak baddha, because they were bound to him in affection. Ateva tam anudrutani gatani chetamsi yesham te. Therefore, their hearts were entirely fixed in him. Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur explains Tatra Tatra Vicheluhu, Vichelus Tatra Tatraha, as they moved about wherever he moved about. They first glanced at him and then afterwards they moved wherever he moved. Krishna is naturally attractive for all living beings because he is the chief eternal amongst all eternals. He alone is the maintainer of the many eternals. This is stated in the Katha Upanishad. And thus one can obtain permanent peace and prosperity by revival of one's eternal relation with him, now forgotten under the spell of Maya, the illusory energy of the Lord. Once this relation is slightly revived, the conditioned soul at once becomes freed from the illusion of material energy and becomes mad after the association of the Lord. This association is made possible not only by personal contact with the Lord, but also by association with His name, fame, form, and qualities. Srimad Bhagavatam trains the conditioned soul to the stage of perfection by submissive hearing from the pure devotee. 14. Nyarundhanudgalad bashpam outkanthya devaki sute niryatyagarano no bhadram iti syad bandhavastriyaha. The female relatives, whose eyes were flooded with tears out of anxiety for Krishna, came out of the palace. They could stop their tears only with great difficulty. They feared that tears would cause misfortune at the time of departure. Outkanthyat, because of great anxiety, which was caused by extreme attachment to him. They controlled their tears with their when before the tears could flow out. Agara niryati nirgachyati sati netrishiva sambhitavatyah putra hetuku abhadram no syar vangalam napudityetadatham. They were frightened. They were frightened that some inauspiciousness would come about because of their tears, and that fear itself dried up their tears. Even though they stopped their tears, still some tears came out. And before they could wet their bodies with the corner of their cloths, they wiped them. They controlled their tears. They used their veils. There were hundreds of ladies in the palace of Hastinapura. All of them were affectionate for Krishna. All of them were relatives also. When they saw that Krishna was going away from the palace for his native place, they were very anxious for him. And as usual, tears began to roll down their cheeks. They thought at the same time that tears at that moment might be a cause of misfortune for Krishna. Therefore, they wanted to check them. This was very difficult for them because the tears could not be checked. Therefore, they smeared their tears in their eyes and their hearts throbbed. Therefore, ladies who were the wives and daughters-in-law of those who died in the battlefield never came in direct contact with Krishna. But all of them heard of him and of his great activities, and thus they thought of him, talked of him, of his name, fame, etc., and became affectionate also, like those who are in direct contact. Therefore, directly or indirectly, anyone who thinks of Krishna, talks of Krishna, or worships Krishna becomes attached to him, because Krishna is absolute. There is no difference between him and his name, form, qualities, etc. Our intimate relation with Krishna can be confidentially revived by our talking of, hearing of, or remembering him. It is so done due to spiritual potency. 15. Mridanga Shankha Bhairiyascha Veena Panava Gomukha Dhundur Yanaka Ghantadya Nedur Dundhu Vayas Tatha. While the Lord was departing from the palace of Hastinapura, different types of drums like the Mridanga, Dhol, Nagara, Dunduri, and Dundubi, and flutes like the Gomukha and other instruments like Venas and Bheris, all sounded together to show him honor. Mridangadayo Dasha Vadyabheda. There are 10 items here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They're all different musical instruments. Sixteen. Prasada Shikhara Rudha Kurun Naryo Didrikshaya Vavrashu Kusumaish Krishnam Prema Vrida Smite Shana. Out of a loving desire to see the Lord, the royal ladies of the Gurus got up on top of the palace, with affection and shyness, showered flowers upon the Lord. Prema Vrida Smita Purva Tam Mikshanam Yasam Taha. Shyness is a particular extra-natural beauty of the fair sex, and it commands respect from the opposite sex. The custom of separating females from males was observed even during the days of the Mahabharata, that is, more than 5,000 years ago. It is only the less-intelligent persons not well versed in the history of the world who say that observance of separation of female from male is an introduction of the Mohammedan period in India. This incident from the Mahabharata period proves definitely that the ladies of the palace observed strict parda, restricted association with men, and instead of coming down in the open air, where Lord Krishna and others were assembled, the ladies of the palace went up on the top of the palace, and from there paid their respects to Lord Krishna by showers of flowers. It is definitely stated here that the ladies were smiling there on the top of the palace, checked by shyness. This shyness is a gift of nature to the fair sex, and it enhances their beauty and prestige, even if they are of a less important family, or even if they are less attractive. We have practical experience of this fact. A sweeper woman commanded the respect of many respectable gentlemen simply by manifesting a lady's shyness. Half-naked ladies in the street do not command any respect, but a shy sweeper's wife commands respect from all. These things were trained, the girls were trained. Human civilization is conceived of by the sages of India is to help one free himself from the clutches of illusion. The material beauty of a woman is an illusion because actually the body is made of earth, water, fire, air, etc. But because there is the association of the living spark with matter, it appears to be beautiful. No one is attracted by an earthen doll. No one in Rajoguna is attracted by an earthen doll, even if it's most perfectly prepared to attract the attention of others. The dead body has no beauty because no one will accept the dead body of a so-called beautiful woman. Therefore, the conclusion is that the spirit spark is beautiful. And because of the soul's beauty, one is attracted by the beauty of the outward body. The Vedic wisdom, therefore, forbids us to be attracted by false beauty. But because we are now in the darkness of ignorance, the Vedic civilization allows very restricted mixing of woman and man. They say that the woman is considered to be the fire and the man is considered to be the butter. The butter must melt in association with fire, and therefore they may be brought together only when it is necessary. And shyness is a check to the unrestricted mixing. It is nature's gift, and it must be utilized. These are all things which are very, very useful for spiritual progress. 17. Chitata patram jagraha muktadama vibhushitam Ratnatandam Gudakesha Priyah Priyatamasyaha. At that time, Arjuna, the great warrior and conqueror of sleep, who is the intimate friend of the most beloved Supreme Lord, took up an umbrella which had a handle of jewels and was embroidered with lace and pearls. Gold, jewels, pearls, and valuable stones were used in the luxurious royal ceremonies. They are all nature's gifts and are produced by the hills, oceans, etc., by the order of the Lord. When man does not waste his valuable time in producing unwanted things in the name of necessities. By so-called development of industrial enterprises, people are now using pots of gattaparcha instead of metals like gold, silver, brass, and copper. They're using margarine instead of pure butter, and 1/4 of the city population has no shelter. So modern civilization is not, it has not made mankind overall happier. There is sufficient evidence for that. There is sufficient evidence. There's even a book by David Berlinski called Human Nature, in which he proves that mankind has at least you have to say it is as bad as it was 500 years back. He's only looking at European history. At least it was as bad as that, if it is not worse. He even considers the war casualties and all. While modern civilization is certainly not a success. 18. Uddhava Satikishchaiva Vyajane Paramadbhute Vikiryamanah Kusumai Reje Madhupati Pathi. Uddhava and Satiki began to fan the Lord with decorated fans, and the Lord, as the master of Madhu, seated on scattered flowers, commanded them along the road. "19. Ashruyanta shishasatya tatra tatra gujerita nanurupanurupascha nirgunasya gunatmanaha." Here and there were heard the benedictions being paid to Krishna, which were neither befitting nor unbefitting, because they were all for the Absolute, who was now playing the part of a human being. Tatyaha, Sri Krishna tasam avyabhicharat, kintu nanurupas anurupas. All these fruits, they were, you cannot say they were wrong. They were being paid to Krishna alone, all these benedictions. But they were not appropriate also. Lord Shri Krishna is described as Nirgunasya, which indicates that he is filled with supreme bliss. Sukhi bhava ityadayo nanarupa. So when they give a blessing, may you be happy, the common blessing, may you be happy. But he is supremely blissful, so that blessing is inappropriate for him. Gunatmanaha, manushya natyavatare anurupascha ityarthaha. But he's playing the role of a human being. He's engaged in a dramatic performance as a human being, and therefore, in that sense, it appears all right, appropriate. यद्यप्येषां गुणानां सर्वेषामपि भगवति नित्यत्वमेव. Even though it is a fact that all these qualities are eternally found in Bhagavan, तथापि तत्तल्लीला सिद्ध्यर्थं तेषां क्वचित् कस्यचित् प्रकाश कस्यचित् अप्रकाशश्च भवति. Still, in some places, certain qualities are manifested and certain qualities are not manifested. Ataeva, therefore, text 19 is spoken. Nirgunasya, prakrita gunatita nitya gunasya indicates that he has his own eternal qualities which are beyond material qualities. Nanurupa, nitya tat paripurnatvena labhantara yoga. Because they cannot be obtained through any other means and they are eternally found in him, the blessings were not appropriate. Gunatmanaha tad ashirvada angigara dwara tad guna vishesha pravartaka nivartakasya anurupascha. He did not it is not that he manifested his qualities because he accepted those blessings. That angikare hetuku satyaha. That is satyaha. Satyaha means all the truths. So because his qualities were both manifested and non-manifested, therefore this presentation is given. Krishna Chakravarti Thakur, Aishwarya Drishtya Nirgunasya. From the perspective of Aishwarya, these blessings were not appropriate. Madhurya Drishtya Gunatmanaha Brahmanyatva Premavashyatvadya Prakrita Gunamayasya Tasya Anurupasya. But from the perspective of Madhurya, sweetness, and certainly he was filled with qualities which were non-material, qualities such as being submissive to Brahmanas, being under the control of love, and so on. The Supreme Lord reciprocated with them by stating things like, I'm always happy only by your blessings. And it is not appropriate to say that that statement is wrong. Tasya dasya sakhya vatsalyaya rasavishaya ashrayatve sati tad bhakta jana samyoga virahadya laukika sukha dukkha adi mayatvacha. Because he is the object of dasya, sakhya, vatsalya and madhurya rasas. It is appropriate that there are transcendental happinesses, distresses, and so on when he is in union with devotees in those rasas or when he is separated from them and so on. The blessings that were which were heard, which were the benedictions that were paid to Lord Krishna, they were all truthful, satyaha, yatharthaha. because dharmanam tasmin sadaiva sattva, because all of these transcendental qualities are constantly present in him. Kintu nana rupanurupascha asan, but they were both inappropriate and appropriate. Nirgunasya Maya gunair aspristasya chidanandamurtehe kutastasya na anurupa. The blessings were not appropriate to him because he is untouched by the qualities of Maya, material Maya, because his form is spiritual and blissful. And he is situated at the summit of spiritual existence. Maya upadhehe sukadukha bhajahan nripadehe jivasya taha sarvadeva sukhi bhava idyadeha aprapta prarthana rupaha taha anurupasyu. If you had a king or a similar jivatma who is subjected to happiness and distress, and who is materially designated, then you would have prayers such as Sarvadaiva Sukhi Bhava, may you always be happy. But it was not the situation here. So the blessings were appropriate for him. Gunatmanaha brahmanyatva vriddhasevakatva premavashyatva swanubandhi gunakhanehe anurupaha tadashisham atiprityangikara, because the Supreme Lord, out of excessive affection, accepts those benedictions. They were appropriate because he is a mind of his own intrinsic qualities, such as being submissive to the brahmanas, serving the elders, being subordinated by selfless affection for him, and so on. At places, there were sounds of Vedic benediction aiming at the personality of Godhead Shri Krishna. The benedictions were fitting in the sense that the Lord was playing the part of a human being as if a cousin of Maharaj Yudhishthira. But they were also unfitting because the Lord is absolute and has nothing to do with any kind of material relativity. He is nirguna because there are no material qualities in him, but he is full of transcendental qualities. In the transcendental world, there is nothing contradictory, whereas in the relative world, everything is opposite. In the relative world, white is the opposite conception of black, but in the transcendental world, there is no distinction between white and black. Therefore, the sounds of benedictions uttered by the learned brahmanas here and there appear to be contradictory in relation with the absolute person, but when they're applied to the absolute person, they lose all contradiction and become transcendental. An example may clarify this idea. Lord Shri Krishna is sometimes described as a thief. He is very famous amongst his pure devotees as the Makhanchor, the butter thief. He used to steal butter from the houses of neighbors at Vrindavan in his early age. Since then, he has been famous as a thief. But in spite of his being famous as a thief, he is worshipped as a thief, whereas in the mundane world, the thief is punished and is never praised. Since he is the absolute personality of Godhead, everything is applicable to him. And still, in spite of all contradictions, he is the supreme personality of Godhead. 20. Anyonyamasi sanjalpa uttama shloka chetasam kauravendra purastrina sarvastuti mano haraha. Absorbed in the thought of the transcendental qualities of the Lord who is glorified in select poetry, the ladies on the roofs of all the houses of Hastinapura began to talk of him. This talk was more attractive than the hymns of the Vedas. They were more attractive than the hymns of the Vedas indicates that the personified Upanishads they appreciated the talks of these ladies. Sarvashruti Manoharaha literally means the talks of those ladies were charming to the ears and the minds. But there is a pun here on the word Shruti. Shruti is used with double meaning here intentionally. Shruti can also refer to the Shruti Shastra itself. Shruti can mean the ear, but Shruti can also refer to Shruti Shastra. So, taking this secondary meaning of Shruti in this context as the Shruti Shastra, it is understood that the personified Upanishads also appreciated the talks of these ladies. So there are two meanings. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that in all the Vedic literatures, the goal is the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. Actually, the glories of the Lord are depicted in such literature as the Vedas, Ramayana, and Mahabharata. In the Bhagavatam, they are specifically mentioned in respect to the Supreme Lord. Therefore, while the ladies on the tops of the houses in the capital of the kings of the Kuru dynasty were talking about the Lord, their talk was more pleasing than the Vedic hymns. Anything sung in praise of the Lord is Shruti Mantra. There are songs of Thakur Narottam Das, one of the acharyas in the Gaudiya Sampradaya, composed in simple Bengali language. But Thakur Vishwanath Chakravarti, another very learned acharya of the same Sampradaya, has approved the songs by Thakur Narottam Das to be as good as Vedic mantras. Show you the song. Effects. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. Amrita Lahari. Narottamashtakam. Yeah. This is Chakravarti Thakur. Narottama Prabhu Ashtakam. 7. Yad Bhakti Nishtho Palarekhikeva Sparshah Panasparsham Maniva Yasya Pramanyam. Mistake. Evam Shrutivadhyatiyam Tasmai Namah Shila Narottamaya. Again and again, I offer my obeisance unto Srila Narottam Das Thakur. His faith and steadiness and devotion is as solid as a rock. His touch transforms like the philosopher's stone. His words are as beneficial as the words of the scriptures. Literally, Pramanyam evam Shrutivadhyatiya. His words are as authoritative as the Shruti itself. And this is so because of the subject matter. The language is immaterial, but the subject matter is important. The ladies who are all absorbed in the thought and actions of the Lord develop the consciousness of Vedic wisdom by the grace of the Lord. And therefore, although such ladies might not have been very learned scholars in Sanskrit or otherwise, still whatever they spoke was more attractive than the Vedic hymns. The Vedic hymns in the Upanishads sometimes give indirect hints about the Supreme Lord, but the talks of the ladies were directly spoken of the Lord, and thus they were more pleasing to the heart. The lady's talks appeared to be more valuable than the learned Brahmana's benedictions. 21. Savai kilayam purushah puratano yadeka asid avishesha atmani agre gunebhyo jagadatmanishware nimilitatman nishisupta shaktishu. The lady said, here he is, the original personality of Godhead, as we definitely remember him. He alone existed before the manifested creation of the modes of nature. And into him only, because he is the Supreme Lord, all living beings merge as if sleeping at night, their energy suspended. This is straight from the Upanishads. Mahasamhita says that the Supreme Lord's potency is referred to as Shri, Bhu, and Durga. That Supreme Soul's energy has a feature of Jiva Maya. His own Maya refers to his desire. There is Guna Maya, which is material. Tatra Teja Saundaryadya Tishayena Vispitabhyaha Sakhibhyaha Anyaha Striyaha Kathayanti. Other women, okay, some women, tell some other women who were their friends, who were astonished at the excessive prowess, beauty, and so on exhibited by Lord Krishna. Natra Vismayah Karyaha Sakshad Ishwaratvad Asyeti Savayeti Chaturthi. There's no need to be astonished because he is directly the Supreme Lord. So they speak 4 verses. Why Smarane? As we definitely remember him. As I remember him. Kila iti prasiddhya pramanadyotakam. Kila, definitely. Indeed. Indeed. Indicates that this is found in the scriptural evidence, the body of scriptural evidence. Ya eka eva advitiya purusha asit sa eva ayam Shri Krishna. That person without a second, that Purusha without second, that is this Shri Krishna. Putra asit purva visheshe atmane nishprapanche nijaswarupe. He was in his own existence, which was devoid of material manifestation. Kada, at what time? Agre, gunebhya gunakshavat purvam. Before the modes of nature were agitated. Tatha nishi pralayecha. And that also at the time of night, which is the time of dissolution. Tasya lakshanam. Jagatam atmani jive nimilitatmani nimilitatman nitiluptasam. Jata vekavachanam. So when the jivas were merged in the form of the Supreme Lord, now all the living entities are now considered, are referred to as a single category. Therefore, Atmani is referred to in singular. Since the jivas are all spiritual, they are Brahman. Where now, what is this merging? Tatraha sutasu shaktishu satishu jivopadi bhuta satvadi shakti laya eva jivalaya ityartha. When the material designations of the jivatma in the form of sattva guna, raja guna, tamo guna, these material potencies, when they are merged, that is what is referred to as the jiva merging. Atmani, they were, he alone existed. He existed in himself, Atmani, own self, in synonyms. That means he existed in Vaikuntha. So first of all, you had ladies who were astonishingly talking to each other, and they were filled with um, the consciousness of Shantarati. So initially he was alone, and which indicates that he did not exhibit his glory. We have heard all of this from the mouths of Vyasa and other sages. So with their fingers, they're pointing out to this person, Lord Shri Krishna, and they were saying, this is that very same person. So the jivas merge in Lord at the time of dissolution and at the time of the great dissolution. They merge in to the Supreme Lord, who is the Antaryami or inner controller of Prakriti. So at that time, all the living entities of the world, they merge into him. The merging of the material designations of the Jivatma is what is metaphorically referred to as the merging of the Jivatma. Another meaning, that person, before the agitation of the modes, that person who existed before the agitation of the modes, at the time of dissolution, he existed in his own existence. That very person is here right now, engaged in various astonishing pastimes with his associates. Like this, he was there at that time also. At that time, there was no Brahma and other demigods, but he was there with his own associates in spiritual existence. Since the Jivatmas are said to be in the scriptures, Shruti scriptures, eternal, Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam. Where is, how's their merging? Suptaha Shaktayaha, Supta Shaktishu. The material designations in the form of the body, they were merged. And metaphorically, that is referred to as the merging of the jivas. They were sleeping in Prakriti. There are two types of dissolution of the manifested cosmos. At the end of every 1,000,000,000,000,000, 8,000,000,000, 640,000,000 solar years, when Brahma, the Lord of one particular universe, goes to sleep, there is one annihilation. And at the end of Lord Brahma's life, which takes place at the end of Brahma's 100 years of age, in our calculation, at the end of what is this? 1,000 million, billion, 8 billion, 614 million times 30 times 12 times 100 solar years. There is complete annihilation of the entire universe. And both annihilations, both the material energy, called the Mahatattva, and the marginal energy, called the Jiva Tattva, merge into the person of the Supreme Lord. The living beings remain asleep within the body of the Lord until there is another creation of the material world, and that is the way of the creation, maintenance, and annihilation of the material manifestation. The material creation is affected by the interaction of the three modes of material nature set in motion by the Lord, and therefore it is said here that the Lord existed before the modes of material nature were set in motion. In the Shruti Mantra, it is said that only Vishnu, the Supreme Lord, existed before the creation, when there was no Brahma, Shiva, or other demigods. Atha Purusho Havai Narayana Asit Na Brahma Na Ishanaha. Vishnu means the Mahavishnu, who is lying on the causal ocean. By breathing only, all the universes are generated in seeds and gradually develop into gigantic forms with innumerable planets with each and every universe. The seeds of universes develop into gigantic forms in the way seeds of a banyan tree develop into numberless banyan trees. This Mahavishnu is a plenary portion of the Lord Sri Krishna, who is mentioned in the Brahma Samhita as follows. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the original personality of Godhead Govinda, whose plenary portion is the Mahavishnu. All the Brahmas, the heads of the universes, live only for the period of his exhaling, after the universes are generated from the pores of his transcendental body. Thus, Govinda or Lord Krishna is the cause of Mahavishnu also. The ladies talking about this Vedic truth must have heard it from authoritative sources. An authoritative source is the only means of knowing about transcendental subject matter, definitely. There is no alternative. The merging of the living beings into the body of Mahavishnu takes place automatically at the end of Brahma's 100 years. But that does not mean that the individual living being loses his identity. The identity is there. And as soon as there is another creation by the supreme will of the Lord, all the sleeping, inactive living beings are again let loose. Let loose. This is a good expression. This is actually sarga. Srishti, sarga means actually letting loose. To begin their activities in the continuation of past different spheres of life. It is called Suptothita Nyaya. That should be N-Y-A dash. Y-A. Or awakening from sleep and again engaging in one's respective continuous duty. When a man is asleep at night, he forgets himself, what he is, what his duty is, and everything else of his waking state. But as soon as he awakens from slumber, he remembers all that he has to do and thus engages himself again in his prescribed activities. The living beings also remain merged in the body of Mahavishnu during the period of annihilation, but as soon as there is another creation, they arise to take up their unfinished work. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita 8.18 to 20. Bhutva bhutva praliyate. The Lord existed before the creative energy was set in action. This is the whole point. The Lord as a person existed before the creative energy was set in action. The Lord is not a product of the material energy. His body is completely spiritual, and there's no difference between his body and himself. Before creation, the Lord remained in his abode, which is absolute and one. And this is exactly what these ladies, they realized it. They learned about it, they had understood it, and they realized it. There's a clear indication that even though they were just women and they were never trained in any Gurukula and so on, simply by serving, visiting sages like Vyasadeva and so on, they had heard from their mouths, and this was their education. In Vedic culture, this is how education was given. It is not that education means everybody should be put in some uniform and sent to school, and this is not how it is. Education is primarily through apprenticeship, for the boys also. Only the Brahminical boys, they are given theoretical training. And that is also very, very intensive. Very intensive. It runs for several years and runs for several hours during the day. And it involves memorizing So it's all very carefully done. For the ladies, they were engaged in practical activities which are overall beneficial for them in the long run. Over the years and decades, it will benefit them. That kind of arrangement is given for them. And they're also encouraged to learn. Everybody is encouraged to learn. 22. Saeva bhuyo nijavarya choditam swajivamayam prakritim susrikshaptim anamarupa manirupana mani vidhitsamano no sasara shastrakrit. The personality of God, again desiring to give names and forms to his parts and parcels to living entities, placed them under the guidance of material nature. By his own potency, material nature is empowered to recreate. तदेवं सृष्टिरादौ प्रलयानन्तरं च निष्प्रपञ्च अवस्थानमुक्त्वा सृष्टिप्रलयोर्मध्ये सप्रपञ्च अवस्थानमाहुः. So they spoke about the Lord's situation when material existence was not manifest. They spoke about the period of time when it is at the beginning of, just at the time of creation, or at the time of, or at the end of dissolution. Let's put it like that. Now they are talking about the Lord's situation when material existence was manifested to the living entities. This is the period between creation and annihilation. Srishti, Sthiti, Pralaya, Srishti, Sthiti, Pralaya, Srishti, Sthiti, Pralaya, like this goes in a cycle. So previously, they spoke about that particular time of between Pralaya and Srishti. Now they're talking of between Srishti and Pralaya. Saeva aprachyutta swarupa sthiti eva prakriti manusasar adhishthitavan. The Supreme Lord, without losing his own nature, he entered into Prakriti. Bhuya punaha. And this he did again, which indicates Srishti Pravahasya Anaditva. This flow of creation is beginningless. Therefore, this word is used, Bhuyaha. Again, Sayeva Bhuyaha. Again desiring to give names and forms to his parts and parcels. Idrishim Nijavirya Choditam Swakala Shakti Preritam. What kind of material nature did he enter into? The one which was empowered by his own personal potency, which means his own personal potency of Kala, time. Swamsha Bhutanam Jivanam Mayam Mohinim. And the Prakriti is the one that bewilders all these jivas who are his own parts and parcels. Ateva Satsrikshatim Svashtumichan. So therefore, Maya Devi, he wanted to engage in the process of creation by revealing more and more and more of her features to the Jivatma. This is how Srishti happens. We will come across the details in the third canto, how it actually happens. Kimarthamanusasara, why did he follow material nature and enter into her existence? Anama rupe atmani jive rupanamani vidhatumichan. Upadhi srishtya jivanam bhogaya ityarthaha. Because he wanted to create the material designations of material names, material forms, and provided for the living entities for their enjoyment. Karmani cha vidhatu vedan kritavan ityahu shastra krititi. And he also wanted to regulate them through prescribed duties. And for that sake, he also revealed the Vedas. That is indicated by the word Shastrakrit, the last word of this shloka. Shastrakrit, the compiler of revealed scripture. So he was also compiling the revealed scripture for the benefit of the living entities. The Lord's dealings with his own plenary, with his parts and parcels in the form of the living entities at the beginning of creation, that is also another type of pastime. Previously also, he never lost his spiritual form, spiritual qualities, spiritual pastimes. Shastrakrit. Shastran Nishkrama Prathamakshana Vedati Shastra Avirbhava Kari Mahavishnu San Prakriti Manusasara. The Supreme Lord, from that very moment when he entered into material nature, at that very moment, he revealed scriptures such as the Vedas. This is a reference to Mahavishnu. And there is that famous statement, Asya Mahato Bhutasya Nishvasitam. That great being has breathed out all the scriptures, Rigveda, Yajurveda, Atharvaveda, Samaveda, Itihasas, Puranas. So this whole list of scriptures which were breathed out by the Lord. This is a reference to that. Anu Prakrutyanugatatvam Nama Prakrutyadhinatvam Tachat Dosheva. To say that the Lord has followed and entered into Prakriti, isn't that just coming under the control of Prakriti? Isn't that a problem? No. Nijaviryena nijabalena preritam svavashikritya kasminschana kritye niyuktam. By his own potency, he has impelled her. He has brought her under control. And for a specific purpose, he has engaged her. Swashakti rupanam jivanam mayam mohinim vashitrim. So he has made an arrangement for her to control his jivas who are also his potencies. Kimarthamanasasara. Why did he follow material nature and enter into her existence? Rama Rupe Atmani Jive Rupanamani Devatiryan Manushyadi Lakshane Vidhitsamana Vidhatum Icchan Stula Sukshma Upadi Srishtya Jivanam Tad Adhyasena Ityartha. Because he wanted to provide these living entities the Rupa and Nama, the particular forms which refers to particular configurations along with the particular names. The configurations have particular names. Deva, for instance. Tiryan, or animals, for instance. Manushya, human beings. So this blueprint already exists with Brahma. So in correspondence to the particular configurations which have particular names, and specific jivas deserve specific combinations of material forms and names. So he wanted to give that. So he wanted to superimpose the living entities with their gross and subtle material designations. So for that, he needed to create those material designations. Karma Jnana Yoga Bhakti Sadhana Siddhyartam tu Prakriti Anugamanat Purvameva Veda Shastrani Kritavan Eveti Shastra. Even before he entered into Prakriti, he manifested the Vedic Shastras. That is why the word Shastrakrit is used. That's the last word of this verse. Because he wants to provide them the ability to attain the perfection of karma sadhana, jnana sadhana, yoga sadhana, and bhakti sadhana. Baladev Vidyabhushan notes that these ladies were pointing out that the son of Devaki is the creator of this world. So that Lord Krishna, who was previously present without any material, without any dealing with any material variety, in the form of his own Swamsha Sankarshana, he followed Prakriti. He impelled her by his words with the thought, let me now create the worlds. This is indicated in the Upanishads. Aikshata. He glanced. Lokanus Srija. Let me now create this world. Swashakti Bhutanam Jivanam Maya Mohitri Miti Swatantiyena Eva Tad Anusritihi Ityartaha. It is by his own independence that he has entered into Prakriti. Because she bewilders the jivas who are his potencies. She doesn't bewilder him. Srikshatim, tad vikshana apta samarthya mahadadi tattva srashtum. So once he impelled her, then she wanted to undergo the process of creation. She attained the ability through his glance. And then she wanted to let loose the various features of Mahatattva, Ahankara, and so on, one by one by one. It is this letting loose that is called creation. Vimarthamanusasara, Anama Rupe, Nama Rupa Shunya, Atmani Jive, Rupa Namani, Deva Manavadi Lakshane, Viditsamana Chikisha. Bhoga Vyakulasya Jivasya Tad Yogena, Bhoga Siddhyarthamiti Bhava. So the reason why he provides them with material names and forms, provides the jivas with material names and forms, is to make it possible for them to attain material enjoyment. Because the jivas, they're all in distress about enjoyment. Idrisha Sannanusasara. What was the person who entered into Prakriti? What was his nature? It's a Shastrakrit. Prakriti Vikshnat Purvameva. Before glancing at Prakriti, Karma, Yoga, Bhakti, Tattva, Bodhakam, Vedam, Yasva, Nishvasita Rupam, Prakrititavan Ityartaha. So he manifested these Vedas, which are his breath, they are breathed out by him. That is the Veda, which teaches the truths of karma, yoga, bhakti. The living entities are parts and parcels of the Lord. They are of two varieties, namely Nityamukta and Nityabaddha. The Nityamuktas are eternally liberated souls, and they are eternally engaged in the reciprocation of transcendental loving service with the Lord in his eternal abode, beyond the manifested mundane creations. But the Nityabaddhas, or eternally conditioned souls, are entrusted to his external energy Maya for rectification of their rebellious attitude towards the Supreme Father. Nityabaddhas are eternally forgetful of their relation with the Lord as parts and parcels. Bewildered by the illusory energy, they think they are products of matter. And thus they are very busy in making plans in the material world for becoming happy. They go on merrily with such plans, but by the will of the Lord, both the plan makers and the plans are annihilated at the end of a certain period, as above mentioned. This is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita as follows. O son of Kunti, at the end of the millennium, all the living entities merge into my nature, and again, when the time of creation is ripe, I begin creation by the agency of my external energy, Bhagavad Gita 9.7. The word bhuyaha indicates again and again, that is to say, the process of creation, maintenance, and annihilation is going on perpetually by the external energy of the Lord. He is the cause of everything. But the living beings who are constitutionally the parts and parcels of the Lord and are forgetful of the sweet relation are given a chance again and again to get rid of the clutches of the external energy and to revive the living being's consciousness. The Lord also creates the revealed scriptures. Vedic literatures are the guiding directions for the conditioned souls. So they can get free from the repetition of creation and annihilation of the material world and the material body. The Lord says in the Bhagavad Gita, this created world and material energy are under my control, under the influence of Prakriti. Automatically, they are created again and again, and this is done by me through the agency of my external energy. Actually, the spiritual spark living entities have no material names or forms. But in order to fulfill their desire to lord it over the material energy of material forms and names, they're given a chance for such false enjoyment. And at the same time, they're given a chance to understand the real position through the revealed scriptures. The foolish and forgetful living being is always busy with false forms and false names. Modern nationalism is the culmination of such false names and false forms. Men are mad after false names and forms. The Prabhupada specifically brings out modern nationalism because, first of all, nationalism is a modern concept. Previously, at least in Vedic civilization, nationalism was not taken seriously because Prakriti is constantly in a flux. So they were not, people were not obsessed with this. This is all through social engineering. And what has it led to? It has simply led to gigantic mass massacres in the form of wars between countries. Men are mad after false names and forms. The form of body obtained under certain conditions is taken up as factual, and the name also taken bewilders a conditioned soul into misusing the energy in the name of so many isms. The scriptures, however, supply the clue for understanding their real position, but men are reluctant to take lessons from the scriptures created by the Lord for different places and times. For example, the Bhagavad Gita is the guiding principle for every human being, but by the spell of the material energy, people do not take care to carry out the programs of life in terms of the Bhagavad Gita. Srimad Bhagavatam is a postgraduate study of knowledge for one who has thoroughly understood the principles of the Bhagavad Gita. Unfortunately, people have no taste for them, and therefore they are under the clutches of Maya for repetition of birth and death. 23. Sava ayam yat padamatra surayo jitendriya nirjita matarishvana pashyanti bhakyut kalitamalatmana nanvesha sattvam parimarshtum arhati. Here is the same Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose transcendental form is experienced by the great devotees, who are completely cleansed of material consciousness, by dint of rigid devotional service and full control of life and the senses. And that is the only way to purify one's existence. All right. I think this clear. Asya darshanam atidurlabham mabhirlabdham ityahu savai ayam. Seeing him is a very rare, it's an excessively rare event. And we have attained it. That is conveyed in the current verse. Savai ayam. Yasya padam swarupam ankrimva. Yat padam. Here is the one whose form we are seeing, or whose lotus feet we are seeing. He is actually seen, it's experienced by great devotees who are in full control of life and the senses. Nirjito matrishva prano yai asvato ashva. Is Surya eva pashyanti. Such great devotees, Surya, Suris, they are the ones who actually see. Ena, how do they see him? Bhaktiya utkalita utkantitaha amalaha yaha atma buddhihi. Ena drishyate tvagyaya buddhya iti shrute. He is seen through the intelligence that is spotless when it is fully developed and it blossoms by bhakti. Shruti also says that when one's intelligence becomes first class, then he is seen. Buddhi-vaimalyasyapyayamev heturityahu. But that Supreme Lord himself, that Lord Sri Krishna that they were seeing, he himself is the cause for the spotlessness of their intelligence also. Anu he sakhi, Esheva Sattvam Buddhim Parimarshtam Samyak Shodhayitum Arhati. Natu Yogadaya Ityartha. It is this Supreme Lord who is capable of completely purifying that intelligence. It is not these processes. Yadva aho esha sattvam jnanam parimashtam आशयितुं दूरगमनेन अप्रत्यक्षी भवितुं न अर्हति. He should not leave this place and become step outside the range of our perception. किन्तु अनेन सह एव गन्तव्यम् इत्यर्थः. On the other hand, we all should go with him. Objection. At the beginning of creation, there are various incarnations such as the Purusha-avatars. They are the ones who are detected, not a person like this whom we are seeing in front of us. किंतु वैवस्वत मन्वन्तरीय अष्टाविंशति चतुर्थ युगस्थ द्वापरे संप्रत्येव एष उपलभ्यते. It is in this particular Chaturyuga. It should be Chaturyuga. It is not Chaturtha Yuga. Chaturyuga. Right, mistake. In the 28th Chaturyuga of the Vaivasvata Manvantara, in Dwapara Yuga, that is currently, this person is seen. So that was the objection. Is it not? In response, they are saying, yes, that's true. This person can be attained through bhakti. His swarupa, his form, his nature is eternal. He's engaged in eternal pastimes. And even though he incarnates in Dwapara Yuga only, as set out here, at all points in time, he is realized by those who have bhakti, devotional service for him. That is pointed out in the current verse. When great souls control their life airs, then they control their senses, because the senses, all the senses are under the control of the life airs. Pranajaya deva nirjitendriyaha ityarthaha. The meaning is, by conquering the life airs, then the senses are completely brought under control. Despite that, when their intelligence, when their spotless intelligence becomes anchoring for the Lord through devotion service, then they see him, they see his lotus feet, because the Shruti has already stated that it's through first-class intelligence one sees the Supreme Being. He himself is the cause for the spotless nature of that intelligence. He alone is capable of purifying the intelligence, not simply the processes of yoga and so on. So from this, it is understood, it's implied that becoming a great soul who is capable of seeing the Lord, bringing the senses fully under control, controlling the life airs and so on, all of this is possible only by engagement in bhakti, not through pranayama and other features of the yoga system and so on. अत्र सूर्यः भक्ति उत्कण्ठत्वे सत्येव पश्यन्ति इति वर्तमाननिर्देशेन सार्वकालिकदृष्टिगोचरत्वात् तस्य सार्वधिकलीलात्वम्. Here, the word pashyanti is used, which is in present tense. They see. The idea is that the Suraya, the great devotees, they see this Supreme Lord who is here. When do they see? They see when their devotional service becomes uh, filled with eagerness for seeing him. So from that, it is understood that this person in front of us, he is actually within the range of the experience of those who deserve to see him at all points in time. And therefore, we understand that his pastimes are eternal. So, this also explains Brahma's statement in Gopalatapani Upanishad that there was one Purusha who had the appearance of a cowherd boy. He had manifested at the end of the life of Brahma. This is found in Shruti, Gopalatapani Shruti. Similarly, in Brahma Samhita, it is noted that Lord Sri Krishna himself, in the form of a cowherd boy, was seen, he was offered prayers at the beginning of creation itself. So the idea is that it's not that only at the end of a particular opera he incarnates in this form. This very person with these features, he himself existed in the past. This very person is the one who made Brahma the creator. He gave him the power of creating. The Suris or great devotees refer to the four Kumaras, etc. The Shruti says, Shraddha Bhakti Dhyana Yoga Davaiti. One perceives the Supreme Being through faith, devotional service, meditation on Him. So through combination of these, one sees Him. There are other scriptural statements in the Shruti like this. The spotlessness of intelligence is also caused by His mercy only. It is not simply by engaging in various processes. Yukta asita matparaha tashehi yasyendriyani tasya pradya pratishtita. In Bhagavad Gita 2.61 also it is pointed out that even if you try to engage in pratyahara, but you do not fix your mind on Lord Krishna, then you are not able to control your senses. But if you try to engage in pratyahara and you focus on Lord Krishna, then the senses are brought under control. That's Bhagavad Gita 2.61. As it is stated in the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord can be known in his real nature by dint of pure devotion service only. So it is stated here that only the great devotees of the Lord who are able to clear the mind of all material dust by rigid devotional service can experience the Lord as he is. Jitendriya means one who has full control over the senses. The senses are active parts of the body and their activities cannot be stopped. The artificial means of the yogic processes to make the senses inactive has proved to be an abject failure. Even in the case of great yogis like Vishwamitra Muni. Vishwamitra Muni controlled the senses by yogic trance, but when he happened to meet Menaka, a heavenly society woman, he became a victim of sex and the artificial way of controlling the senses failed. But in the case of a pure devotee, the senses are not at all artificially stopped from doing anything, but they're given different good engagements. When the senses are engaged in more attractive activities, there is no chance of their being attracted by any inferior engagements. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that, emphasis, the senses can be controlled only by better engagements. End of emphasis. Devotional service necessitates purifying the senses by engaging them in the activities of devotional service. Devotional service is not inaction. Anything done in the service of the Lord becomes at once purified of its material nature. The material conception is due to ignorance only. There is nothing beyond Vasudeva. The Vasudeva conception gradually develops in the heart of the learned after a prolonged acceleration of the receptive organs. But the process ends in the knowledge of accepting Vasudeva as all in all. In the case of devotion service, this very same method is accepted from the very beginning. And by the grace of the Lord, all factual knowledge becomes revealed in the heart of a devotee due to dictation by the Lord from within. Therefore, controlling the senses by devotion service is the only and easiest means. Okay. Any questions? Otherwise, I'll stop. Tomorrow will be a review session. Okay. Sankshakalpatarubhyasya kripasindukhya vacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha.